The arrival of the crystal spires of Helios Station caught the light of 3 distant suns, creating rainbow patterns across the mining platform's metal hull. For 27 years, the station had operated in peaceful isolation, extracting rare minerals from the asteroid belt that surrounded the Kepler system. The 50,000 miners, engineers, and their families who called it home had built a thriving community in the depths of space. Admiral Corthax of the Zephrian Empire watched the station through the viewing port of his flagship, the Void Render. His pale blue skin seemed to glow in the bridge's dim lighting, and his 4 arms moved with practiced efficiency as he reviewed the tactical display. As Zephrians had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade, each victory adding to their reputation as the galaxy's most feared military force. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, "All battle groups are in position. The station's defenses are minimal. We estimate complete pacification within 2 hours." Corthax nodded, his black eyes reflecting the cold calculation that had made him the Empire's youngest fleet commander. The Zephrian way was simple and effective: overwhelming force, swift victory, and absolute submission. Any species that refused to join their empire was eliminated. It was a strategy that had never failed. "Begin the assault," he commanded. "Standard pacification protocol. Leave no survivors." The Zephrian fleet moved forward like a dark tide. 300 warships, each bristling with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, advanced on the defenseless mining station. The ships themselves were works of art and terror, their obsidian hulls designed to inspire fear in any who saw them approach. Inside Helios Station, emergency alarms began to wail. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief scientist, rushed to the command center where his colleague Captain Sarah Chun was coordinating the evacuation. Webb had been studying something strange in the outer system for weeks, but now all his research seemed meaningless in the face of approaching annihilation. "How long do we have?" Webb asked, his weathered face pale with concern. "Maybe 30 minutes before they reach effective weapons range," Chun replied, her fingers flying across the control panels. "The evacuation ships won't make it. We're too far from any jump point." Through the station's massive observation windows, they could see the Zephrian fleet approaching like a swarm of deadly insects. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of how small and vulnerable their peaceful community truly was. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Zephrian vessel." Admiral Corthax's image appeared on the main screen, his alien features sharp and intimidating. "Inhabitants of Helios Station," he began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power, "you are now subjects of the Zephrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and you will suffer beyond imagination." Chun stepped forward, her jaw set with determination. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of Helios Station. We are a peaceful mining operation. We have no weapons, no military value. There's no need for violence." The Admiral's laugh was cold and mechanical. "Your pleas are irrelevant. The Empire expands, and you are in our path. You have 10 minutes to consider your position." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Webb placed a hand on Chun's shoulder, feeling the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on them. They had built something beautiful here, a testament to what different species could achieve when they worked together. Now it would all be reduced to debris and memory. "Wait," Webb said suddenly, his eyes widening as he stared at his sensor readings. "There's something out there. Something big, coming from the direction of the outer system anomaly I've been tracking." Chun moved to his station, studying the readings with growing amazement. "That's impossible. The energy signature is off the charts, but it's not matching any known propulsion system. Space itself seemed to ripple near the edge of the system, like water disturbed by a stone. The distortion grew larger, more pronounced, until reality itself appeared to tear open. From this impossible opening emerged a vessel unlike anything in the galactic databases. The ship was massive, easily 3 kilometers in length, but its design was completely alien to both human and Zephrian understanding. Its hull seemed to be composed of layers of different materials, some metallic, others appearing almost organic. Energy patterns flowed across its surface like living veins, pulsing with a rhythm that suggested consciousness rather than mere machinery. Admiral Cortex stared at the newcomer with growing unease. "Analysis," he barked to his sensor operators. "Unknown." "Vessel, Admiral," came the nervous reply. "Hull composition it's like nothing we've ever seen. Multiple materials that shouldn't be able to exist together. And the energy readings, ... Sir, they're drawing power from sources we can't identify." A mysterious ship positioned itself directly between the Zephrian fleet and Helios station, its presence somehow making the space around seem more solid, more real. It wasn't moving in the traditional sense, but rather seemed to be convincing the universe to rearrange itself around its desired position. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced, "from the unknown vessel." The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm and measured, carrying an accent that seemed almost familiar to the humans listening. "Zephrian fleet, this is Commander Jackson Torres of the Terran vessel Defiance. You are ordered to cease your attack and withdraw from this system immediately." Corfax's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Terran? We have no record of such a species. Identify yourself properly, unknown vessel, and explain your interference in Imperial operations." "We are human," Torres replied simply, "and these people are under our protection." Both Chun and Webb exchanged glances of amazement. Humans had been declared extinct by the Galactic Council over a century ago, their home system reportedly destroyed by a stellar collapse. Yet here was a human voice, speaking with quiet confidence in the face of overwhelming odds. "Impossible," Corthax snarled. "The human species was eliminated decades ago. Your homeworld was destroyed." "Reports of our extinction have been greatly exaggerated," Torres said, and there was something in his tone that made even the hardened Zephrian warriors shift uncomfortably. "We've been busy, Admiral, learning, adapting, preparing. The Defiance hadn't fired a single weapon, but the space around the Zephrian fleet began to behave strangely. Their targeting systems started reporting impossible readings. Their navigation computers struggled to maintain accurate positions, and their weapons arrays began powering down without any external interference. What are you doing to our ships?" Corthax demanded, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. "We've learned to work with the universe rather than against it," Torres explained. "Your weapons operate on principles of destruction and domination. We've convinced them that peace is a more efficient option." Dr. Webb stared at his instruments in wonder. "Sarah, look at this. The energy patterns around their ship. It's not just advanced technology. They're manipulating the fundamental forces of reality itself." "You have one chance, Admiral," Torres continued. "Withdraw your fleet and leave. These people in peace. The age of conquest through fear is ending." Corthax's rage overrode his growing fear. "You face the might of the Zephrian Empire with a single ship. Our fleet will tear you apart. Fire all weapons." He commanded. The Zephrian fleet unleashed a barrage that should have reduced any ship to atomic particles. Plasma beams, quantum, torpedoes, and gravitational disruptors converged on the Defiance with enough force to crack a planet. The space around the human vessel erupted in brilliant explosions that briefly outshone the system's 3 suns. When the light faded, the Defiance remained exactly where it had been, completely unharmed. The human ship hadn't even raised shields. It had simply existed through the attack, as if the weapons had been nothing more than a light show. "Interesting," Torres said, his voice still maddeningly calm. "Is that the best you can do?" The defiance finally moved, but not in any way that made sense to the observers. Rather than accelerating or changing course, it seemed to step sideways through dimensions, peering instantly among the Zephrian formation. Where it passed, the alien warships simply stopped functioning, their crews unharmed, but their vessels completely neutralized. "How?" Korthax whispered, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being rendered helpless by forces beyond his understanding. "We had a long time to think about survival," Torres replied. "When your species believes you're extinct, you have the luxury of developing without interference. We learned to think differently about physics, about reality itself. Every challenge made us stronger. Every setback taught us new possibilities." The Defiance continued its impossible dance through the Zephrian fleet, disabling ship after ship, with what appeared to be nothing more than its presence. The human vessel wasn't destroying anything, merely convincing the alien technology that cooperation was preferable to conflict. Captain Chun found herself smiling for the first time in hours. "They're not just surviving," she said to Webb. "They're showing the galaxy that there's another way." As the last of the Zephrian ships powered down, Admiral Korthax realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in the Empire's history. For the first time in Centu Asterisk, the reckoning, the silence that followed Commander Torres' words was deafening. Admiral Korthax sat in his command chair, staring at the impossible scene before him. His entire fleet, the pride of the Zephrian Empire, hung motionless in space, like toys abandoned by a child. The human vessel Defiance maintained its position between the disabled warships and Helios Station, a guardian angel made of metal and mystery. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "all our systems are non-responsive. Weapons, engines, communications. Everything except life support has been shut down." Korthax's four arms trembled with rage and fear. In 3 decades of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. The Zephrian Empire had built its power on superior technology and overwhelming force, but this human ship had made both advantages meaningless. "Commander Torres," Korthax said, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion, "what do you want?" "I want you to listen," Torres replied, his calm tone unchanged. "For the first time in your Empire's history, I want you to truly listen to what I'm about to tell you." The main view screen aboard the Defiance activated, showing the bridge of the human vessel. The crew looked surprisingly ordinary, wearing simple uniforms without the elaborate armor favored by most military species. But their eyes held a depth of knowledge and experience that made even the hardened Zephrian veterans uncomfortable. "Commander." Torres stepped into view, and both Chun and Webb gasped. He was clearly human, but something was different about him. His movements were too fluid, too precise, as if he existed in perfect harmony with the ship around him. When he spoke, his words seemed to carry the weight of entire civilizations. 137 years ago, Torres began, the Galactic Council declared humanity extinct. Our home system, Earth, was indeed destroyed, but not by natural causes. It was eliminated by a coalition of species who feared what we might become. Dr. Webb felt his heart racing. The official records had always stated that Sol System had suffered a stellar collapse, but this revelation cast everything in a new light. "They were right to fear us," Torres continued, "but not for the reasons they imagined. We weren't a threat because we were violent or aggressive. We were a threat because we refused to accept limitations." The image on the screen shifted, showing a massive structure hidden in the depths of interstellar space. It was clearly artificial, but its design defied every known principle of engineering. The structure seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its surfaces folding and unfolding in patterns that hurt to look at directly. While the galaxy celebrated our extinction, Torres said, the survivors among us were busy. We had lost our homeworld, our colonies, everything we had built. But we still had our greatest strength, our ability to adapt and overcome. Captain Chun found herself leaning forward, captivated by the story unfolding before them. How many of you survived? Fewer than 1,000,000, Torres replied. But we had learned something important from our near extinction. We had been thinking too small, too limited by conventional understanding of what was possible. The image shifted again, showing vast workshops where human engineers worked alongside machines that seemed to be made of living light. The technology was beyond anything in the known galaxy, but it was the expressions on the human faces that truly captured attention. They showed not the grim determination of survivors, but the joy of creators exploring infinite possibilities. We spent the first 50 years just learning to survive in the deep void, Torres explained. But survival wasn't enough. We had to understand why we had been targeted, why other species feared us so much. The answer was simple. We never stopped asking, what if? Admiral Korthax felt his certainty crumbling. What are you saying? I'm saying that while your empire was conquering worlds through force, we were conquering the laws of physics themselves. Every defeat taught us new lessons. Every challenge opened new possibilities. We learned to work with quantum mechanics instead of against it, to partner with the universe rather than dominate it. The space around the Defiance began to shimmer, and suddenly dozens of other ships materialized from nothing. Each one was unique, but they all shared the same impossible design principles as the flagship. They hadn't been hidden or cloaked. They had simply chosen not to exist in this dimension until now. The Terran Defense Fleet, Torres announced. 300 ships, each one designed not to destroy, but to protect and preserve. We've been watching the galaxy for decades, waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. Webb's scientific mind raced as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. The technology. It's not just advanced. It's fundamentally different. They're not using energy the way we understand it. We learned to ask the universe for help instead of demanding it, Torres said, somehow hearing the whispered comment. When you approach reality as a partner, rather than a resource to be exploited, it becomes remarkably cooperative. The Zephrian fleet found their communication systems suddenly active again, but they were receiving transmissions from an impossible source. The voices of species they had conquered years ago filled their channels, speaking from worlds that should have been lifeless ruins. You see, Torres explained, we've been busy while you built your empire. Every world you destroyed, every species you eliminated, we found ways to preserve and protect. Time is more flexible than most species realize. Admiral Korthax's voice cracked as he spoke. Impossible. We saw the worlds burn. We confirmed the extinctions. You saw what you needed to see, Torres replied gently. We couldn't save everyone, but we saved enough. And now we're going to give them back their freedom. The space around Helios Station began to change. The mining platform found itself surrounded by a protective field that pulsed with the same energy as the human ships. But more than that, the field seemed to be enhancing the station itself, making it stronger, more resilient. This is what we offer, Torres announced to both the Zephrian fleet and the people of Helios Station. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not domination, but partnership. We've learned that the universe is vast enough for all of us to thrive. Captain Chun felt tears streaming down her face. You're giving us hope. Hope is humanity's greatest gift. To the galaxy, Torres replied. We've never been the strongest or the fastest species, But we've always been the most stubborn. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible. The Defiance moved closer to the Zephrian flagship, and Admiral Korthax could see the human ship's surface more clearly. It wasn't just metal and circuits. There were organic components, crystalline structures, and materials that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. The ship was alive in ways that defied conventional understanding. "What happens now?" Korthax asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now you choose," Torres said. "You can continue your empire's path of conquest and destruction, but you'll find that the galaxy is no longer as defenseless as it once was. Or you can join us in building something better." The other human ships began to move, not toward the Zephrian fleet, but toward the outer edges of the system. As they passed, long-range sensors detected something that made both human and alien observers gasp in amazement. The ships were leaving behind a network of quantum beacons, each one connected to the others through dimensions that normal space couldn't contain. "We're building a new kind of galactic community," Torres explained. "One where information and assistance can travel instantly across any distance. Where no world will ever stand alone against oppression again." Dr. Webb realized the implications immediately. A quantum communication network spanning the entire galaxy. Every species, every world, connected instantly. "And protected," Torres added. "We've learned that isolation breeds fear, and fear breeds violence. But when species can communicate freely, when they can share knowledge and culture without restriction, they discover that cooperation is always more rewarding than conquest." The Zephrian fleet began to receive new transmissions, this time from their own conquered worlds. The voices were not accusatory or vengeful, but curious and hopeful. Species that had been crushed by the Empire's advance were asking questions about this new possibility, wondering if peace might actually be achievable. Admiral Korthax felt the weight of centuries of military tradition pressing down on him. Everything he had believed about strength and power was being challenged by this impossible human ship and its crew. But as he listened to the voices of species his empire had conquered, he began to understand something that had been hidden from him his entire life. "You're not just more advanced," he said slowly. "You're showing us what we could become." "Every species has the potential for greatness," Torres replied. "The tragedy is that most never discover it because they're too busy fighting each other. We want to change that." The quantum beacon network continued to expand, and with it, the voices of hope from across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia began to communicate directly, sharing stories and discovering common ground. The network wasn't just technological. It was social, cultural, and spiritual. "The age of empire is ending," Torres announced to the galaxy. "The age of community is beginning, and humanity will be here to help any species that wants to join us in building something better than what came before." As the Defiance began to move away from the disabled Zephrian fleet, Admiral Korthax made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Wait," he called out. "How do we begin?" Torres smiled, and for the first time since the encounter began, his expression showed genuine warmth. The same way humanity always begins anything important, with a single question: what if we could do better? The human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the quantum beacons and a galaxy forever changed by the knowledge that hope, creativity, and stubborn determination could overcome any obstacle. The age of human leadership had begun, not through conquest, but through the simple act of showing others what was possible when species worked together instead of against each other. In the depths of space, aboard stations and ships throughout the galaxy, beings of countless species looked up at the stars and asked themselves the most human question of all: what if?